Hey everybody, I wanted to make a video about how to unwrap some complex and some semi-complex parts. I've got a model here made by Tim Seaton. Good job, Tim, on this interesting massive machine gun. Was that some sort of 50 caliber World War II era beast? I don't know when it was, but it looks cool. First things first, let's turn this grid off. I toggled that with the G key. And the idea is to unwrap these parts and do it in a sensible way so that you can apply the least amount of textures to it. One thing you don't want to do is paint a texture for this ammo tray, paint a texture for this, paint a texture for that, and just what you'll wind up doing is just having this really inefficient and under-optimized texture system. What you want to do is attach parts in sensible ways. So the strategy that I would use is I would attach all of the parts that are attached to the receiver that would normally move with this receiver. So let's see, I'll grab that. Tim has applied this Unwrap UVW to it. I'm going to just collapse that. And then I'm going to hit this attach button, and I'm going to attach all the parts that would normally go with this kind of master body part. Alright, so I think I've gotten most of it. Let's add that. So what I'm talking about is if I were to animate this, say this gun barrel having some recoil, and then maybe this charging handle is animating when the thing is firing, this part would animate by itself, but I don't want it to pivot around this pivot point that it's got. I'm going to hit the L key to go to left, and then I'm going to come over here to the hierarchy tab, effect pivot only, go to the move tool, and let's move this thing down to where I want the whole part to pivot. I'm just eyeballing it now. I'm looking at this point of this blue axis, and I'll just kind of line it up as close as I can, and the same thing with the green. And so I'll turn off effect pivot only, hit E for rotate, and you can see I got pretty close. Just by spinning that around, you can see that it's going to work. So this is going to be a separate part. This will be a separate part that I will parent to the large part here, and then the same with the charging handle. And then why don't I make this a separate series of parts too? I'll come here, collapse that, and I'll attach these base pieces. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to, before I attach, I'm going to grab this piece with, it's got the access point in the center, and I'm going to use it to attach everything else to, so that I keep this access point in the center. So I'll attach that, and look, now I've got a very clean access point there. It will rotate around like that. So if I were to grab this part and hit the link tool and parent it to that part, when I animated or keyframed, see how it all comes with. And then I'll show you this part. I will link to the receiver, and then the charging handle I will link, and now it all comes with. Animates like that, animates like that, and then I can put keyframes on this barrel and that handle. Alright, so that's really my strategy, is to have 1, 2, 3, 4 separate parts, and I can apply the same texture to those 4 parts. And I'll show you how to do that in a bit. Okay, so let's unwrap most of this piece right here. And I will do that by applying the Unwrap UVW. And let's start by unwrapping a fairly simple piece, like maybe this barrel here. So let's open up the editor, put that over there, make it a little bit bigger. And then I want to select all the polygons of this hinge barrel, and so I'll go to polygon, but I want to do it by element, so that's what this icon is right here. So I've got all the parts. Now my strategy when I'm unwrapping stuff is to grab everything in the entire object, move it to the left, and that's my workflow. Unwrap stuff is right here. This is my work area, and finished stuff is to the right, and so that just kind of lets me know when I'm starting and when I'm finished. Okay, so this barrel, I've got the element selected, and so I can select these pieces by element. I'll press quick planar map right here, and that snaps it inside the 0, 1 space. I want to peel off these end pieces, so let me turn off by element. Just grab that and grab, why don't I hit this grow button, this plus right here, once, twice, and now I have that entire end cap. I'll press quick planar map, and there it is right there, but I'm not actually seeing these polygons because I'm looking right down the length of them. I'm looking at it like this. So what do? Well, I'll select by element over here. I've got the whole thing now. I'll come up here to Tools, Relax, by Polygon Angles, and then I'll hit Start Relax, and now it popped out and it gave me fairly distortion free. Looks like it could be a little bit longer, so why don't I turn element off. I'll select that, and I'm going to scale this down a little bit to give the size of these polygons a little bit more accuracy. Watch what happens when I turn on this checker pattern here. The size of these squares should be the same size as these squares, and I might have overdone it. I might have stretched it a little bit, so I'll scale it back up a little bit. There. So I mean, the whole idea is to get it close. I'll have a better idea of how I'm doing when I apply a texture to it. So I'll grab this element, I'll move it to the right, indicating that it's done, and let me go get the other side. There's that piece. I'll hit the grow button once, twice, and then I'll hit quick planar map, move it over here. I'll grab the inside, turn off by element. I'll grab the inside and I'll scale it down a little bit, just trying to roughly match what I've done up here. Grab the whole element, and then I can move it on top of this guy or just keep it separate. Okay, so I've got the ends of that piece relatively done. Why don't I grab the inside here? Now, you can probably imagine how I would want to unwrap this. I want this to be, think of this as a Coke can, and I'm taking a pair of tin snips. I'm going to cut a seam right down one side of it, and I want this Coke can to lay flat like a piece of paper. So, okay, so where are the tin snips, you might be asking? They're right here. I've got seams, and I've got point to point. I've got convert edge selection to seams, and I've got expand polygon selection to seams. I rarely use these last two, and I almost always use point to point. So let me show you how point to point works. I'm going to hit F3 to toggle shaded on and off, because I want to kind of see through this thing. I'll go to point mode. Where should I put my seam? I should put my seam on the bottom where very few people can see it. And then there, the blue indicates my recommended seam, and the green indicates the seams that I've already made between these pieces and the remaining body. So the blue in my point to point I put right through there, and now the next step is to use Pelt. And then here's the Pelt icon. I'll click Pelt map, and check this out a little bit. Think of pelt mapping as what old trappers did to little animals. This is the stretcher, and I want to start the pelt, and you can see it stretched out that Coke can. I'll hit commit, and the last step is to take out the distortion. Some of these polygons have been expanded more than their neighbors, so I want to relax my polygon angles, start relax, and there, it's far more consistent now. Alright, so that barrel got done fairly quickly. Move it over here, grab everything, scale it down a little bit, and I'm calling that done for now. Probably done in total, because you can see that there's very little distortion in there. Okay, let's do another part. Why don't I do maybe this piece right here. I'll select by element. I've got that piece, that piece, that, and that. And as I'm looking at this, I'm noticing some pretty grave errors, and I don't know if any of you picked it up, but watch what happened here. I know that when Tim modeled this, he modeled this piece and then he mirrored it over using the mirror tool up here. Do you see how the polygons are very dark here, but they're normal here? That means that the normals are inverted. So what I'm going to do is I have to fix that, because inverted polygons are a real train wreck. Well, I'm just guessing here, but watch what happens when I render this thing. Let's see, I'll say continue. There, my theory is correct. I'll render it again. Do you see how these polygons are inverted, but these are coming out? And then we've got a little bit of we've got an error right here. You can see it. We've got some smoothing tension there. So what has to happen before I can go any further is I need to collapse all this. I will select this element, and then look at this flip button here. I'll press flip, and that flips all the polygons facing the other way. So now when I render, continue, there, it got rid of that problem. And so now I could probably come in here to vertex, select these vertices. See how it says 2 vertices selected, and I press weld and it made it 1. I have 2 vertices here and it made it 1. Do I have 2 there? Nope. Okay, so that's the problem solved, and I suspect he's got it down here as well. Look how this is much darker. These polygons are much darker than that. That's the software telling you you have a train wreck and you need to clean that up. So I'll select this element, I'll say flip, and then come in here. Let's grab these vertices. 1 selected there, 2 vertices there, weld, 1 there, and 2 vertices there, weld. So I just cleaned up your junk, Tim. So now it's all fixed. Okay, so let's unwrap this little handle piece right there. Go back to the modifier, unwrap EVW, and open up the editor. And again, all my stuff is over here, and then the finished stuff is over here. So let's go to by element and polygon element. I grab that whole handle, press quick planar map. That gets that thing into the 0-1 space. But let's, instead of, see this yellow box right here? Instead of looking at it this way, let's change that to that way, so we get a map like that. Much better. Now most of my work is done. So I will select all the polygons on one side by, say, using select by planar angle, and I'll just type in a low number like 10. Okay, so turn off by element. There's all the polygons on the bottom side, and I'll hit quick planar map. And then if I select the other shell, that's the remainder, and I want these polygons on the edge. I want them to have UV space. So watch what happens when I hit Tools, Relax. It's not the same shape because it's got those polygons on the edge. It would help if I were to make some cuts. Think of it again as paper, origami paper. I'll just put in some seams here, maybe here, here. I'm telling the software where to relieve tension so that when it tries to solve it and lay it flat, it can do so. Okay, so maybe one more over here. Okay, let me select that element. And let's go to Pelt, Start Pelt, Commit. You can see these little notches are where I made those cuts. And then I'll say Start Relax, and there's a little bit of distortion, but not a whole lot. And now when I paint this thing, what I paint in Photoshop will be very, very close to what I get when it's rendered. So there's that piece is the top, and that piece is the bottom. We'll scale those down and move those to the right. Okay, I'm calling those done. Let's scoot that a little bit closer. Okay, let's do a little more challenging of a piece. Make that a little bit smaller. Why don't I try to unwrap this funky barrel piece here? All right, and I want to hide all the other parts. So let me go down in the stack to Element. I'll select the element of this, I guess you could call it a heat sink for lack of a better phrase, and I'm going to hide unselected, and then I will select this barrel, right click, hide selection, select this, right click, hide selection, and then come back to here. These green seams, they're kind of ghosted. These are the UV seams that either the software picked or that you picked. Remember when we unwrapped that barrel? That's the seams that we chose. And then this handle, those are the seams that we chose. But the software kind of randomly picked those on its own. So we just have to ignore that. We could come over here to display. You could turn off map seams if that's really bugging you. And then the peel seams you can also turn off. Okay, so let's come back up here to the editor. I want to grab all the polygons on the inside. So again, I will use this trick called Select by Planar Angle. And let's do, say, 30. And I'll select, hold the Control button down, Alright, so I have all the inside polygons there, and I want to put them inside the 0, 1 space, so I'll press Quick Planar Map. And then I want everything else, so I could come over here, and that's all the outside polygons of that, and I'll hit Quick Planar Map. And now I have two shells. I have the inside and I have the outside. So think about the strategy of what you're doing here. Not too many people are going to really care or ever see the inside, so it isn't so important that you get that totally dialed in, but it is fairly important to get the outside distortion free. Now if I were to include the inside rings that we see here, that's going to cause more distortion on these pieces outside of here. So I think a smarter strategy would be to grab the inside pieces on this shell and then include all these pieces. And just bear with me while I quickly run around here and click that. I'll pause the video while I go do. Okay, so I had a little click fest there for a few minutes, and I went around and I just clicked all the inside pieces there, and I've got the shell over here of the inside polygons, and then I have all the inner rings. So how do I get those into one shell? Quick Planar Map. See how that merges them all together? So now I've got the inside and the outside in two separate shells. Okay, so let me unwrap the inside. That's probably the trickier part. I'm going to use point to point. That's what this tool is right here, point to point. I'll start out here, I'll go all the way to the other end, and make sure that I got it all. It's kind of like an optical illusion sometimes. Okay. Sometimes I can't even tell if I got it or not. So if I hit Pelt Map, start Pelt, nope, it didn't get it. So let me try that again. Point to point, here to there and there. Doesn't seem to be wanting to pick up. Let's go to okay, so the problem was I have map seams and peel seams turned off. So I've cut these seams into here, but I don't want them anymore. So what I can do is go to Edit Seams, hold the Alt button down, and just get rid of all those suggested peel seams that I want. And then come back here to point, and then click here, there, and there, and let me just make sure the other end doesn't need another one. Yep. Looks like I've got some seams there I need to get rid of. Come here over here to Edit Seams. And you can, if you want to blow away all of them and start over, it's easy to do that way too. So point to point, from here to here, that gives me the peel seam I want, and now I can go Pelt, start Pelt, it unwraps it. But it didn't have enough stretcher space, so watch what happens. I hit Pelt again, start Pelt. I need more stretcher space for this thing to behave correctly. So I'll go to Pelt Options, select Stretcher, scale that thing up, and then press Start Pelt, and look, it does a much better job. What if I were to scale that a little bit more? See how I'm giving it more space and it's doing a better job? Now I'll go to Relax, by Polygon Angles, start Relax, let it cook for a little while. You want to get as much distortion out of those polygons as possible. And again, this is the inside and not the outside, so the stakes are a little bit lower. Okay, so we'll call that done. Rotate that to either a horizontal or vertical orientation. Scale it down a little bit. Let's grab the outside. And if I wanted to grab the faces on this outer ring, I can just hold the control button down, grab those. Press Quick Planar Map. And then you can see those blue seams. I want to get rid of those. I'll just hold down the Alt button and get rid of them. Okay, so I've got the outer seam. I know that from these the green seams are telling me what's bottom and what's up. So this direction is up and this direction is down. So that means a sensible place to put the seam would be on the bottom here. So I'll go point to point from here to here to here. And let's get the other side, get this little piece I missed. And then I'll hit Pelt, start Pelt, and again the stretcher's not big enough, so I'll select Stretcher, scale it up, start the Pelt, commit, and then start the Relax. Let that go for a bit. It's kind of thrown up here in the corner. Okay, so when the software does this kind of thing, let's orient that. Doesn't hurt. You can always repelt it. Start pelt and make the stretcher larger. Commit. And then I'm looking at this, and you can see that what happened this iteration was different than what happened the last iteration. So you can always go back and repelting, reskinning this thing, and until you get the result you want. Okay, so that's pretty good. That's going to be a fairly distortion-free solution for a fairly complex object. I'm going to give more texture resolution space to the outside than I am the inside, so I'll make that much smaller, and then we'll just kind of tuck those over. Maybe it can be a little bit bigger than that. Alright, so I've done 3 parts. Let's close this, close that. I'll collapse the stack. I haven't lost any of my UVs. I want to go to Element and unhide all. If we apply that modifier again, there's our pieces that are done, and these pieces are still waiting. So I think that's given you enough to go on. You got the barrel piece, you got the handle piece, and you got this piece right here. That gives you a pretty good idea of how to use Pelt and Relax and how to use point-to-point to tell the software where you want the cuts. I'll do one last piece just to give you an idea of how I do this receiver. Why don't I grab all the faces on the side of this receiver here, and instead of just clicking like this all day long, I'll go by angle, and I'll use a small angle like 10, and that grabbed the whole thing. So then I can hit Quick Planar Map. There's that. Why don't I then turn off okay, and the bottom, use it by angles, and then the back. Okay, so I've got the outsides and the side. I'll hit Quick Planar Map, but I need to tell it where to make the cuts. So again, I'll do point to point. There's a seam right there. Hit F3 so I can see through it. This might be a situation where I want to hide some other elements. Okay, looks like I lost my UVs there when I went down in the stack, so I'll select this side, that side, that side, hit Quick Planar Map, and then I want this point, this edge, that edge, and that edge to be cut. So now when I pelt it and then relax it, it comes out perfect. Okay, so there's that side, and then we can quickly grab that, Quick Planar Map. Now we've got the back side. It's a different size than this piece. Let's scale that down. And you could even weld these together. Okay, so how do I do that? I'm going to turn on a tool called Show Vertex Connections. It's up here in Display. So that way when I grab those vertices, it tells me where this thing should be connected. So it looks like if I were to grab these polygons, it needs to be rotated 180 degrees like that, and then move down like this. But I want to do that more precisely, so I'm going to use this rotate tool here, 1, 2, and then move it down, and I need to scale it up a little bit larger so it'll fit perfectly like that. Okay, now I'm going to go to the edge tool, grab an edge here, hit this loop button so it loops all the way across, and then we can hit stitch to target, and look, it's snapped automatically. So now you have the whole receiver as one UV shell, and now you just have to go back and grab those inner pieces and unwrap those. So I could grab that. I only got the inside, I didn't get that perimeter, so I'll hit the grow button, quick planar map, and then hit relax so that it gives it unique spaces. There's that side. I'm not going to try and tuck it inside of there. It's just not that important to spend that time, but I will make it the same texture size. Okay, and then let's go get the other side, grow it, quick planar map, relax, scale it to fit, okay, and that just leaves this these pieces in here. Quick planar map, and let's give it a seam. I'll pelt that, and then relax it, scale it down, and then I want to rotate it 90, move it over, and there you have it. Receiver's done. I think that took, what, 3.5, 4 minutes? Scale that down a little bit. So that's the process. You just kind of go from left to right, and you're using a variety of tools, mostly point to point and edit seams, pelt, and then the relax tool. And then every once in a while you got to weld some pieces together. But in the end, you get these distortion-free or nearly distortion-free parts. And that means whatever you paint in Photoshop will come out perfectly. And then I'll just unhide all. Okay, I hope that helped you guys. Please ask questions if you're still stuck.